performed interactively in accordance with the design data. Basically here, well, this is probably the end game. By the end of the year, everybody will be doing the same thing. And it seems like right now, or in the past 10 years, commissioning is basically just been HVAC systems. And so now we're moving towards more systems, and we'll cover that in the following slide. Other definitions that we need to clarify and all start talking the same language, that the commissioning authority, I have three definitions here: commissioning team, commissioning authority, and commissioning specialist. The commissioning authority is not one person does everything. It's actually a commissioning team, and the whole team has to coordinate those actions in order to follow the commissioning process. But the commissioning authority is the one representative responsible, or not necessarily one representative, but the representative responsible for ensuring commissioning process is properly carried out according to the contract requirements. And this is what I like to call professional NAG. So the commissioning authority doesn't necessarily have to be at every single test that's being performed, but he does have to make sure that it's done and that it's done correctly. The third bullet here is commissioning specialist. This is a term that we're probably using in USACE. I'm not sure if it's being used in the industry as well, but this is the person who's responsible for carrying out the detailed planning and implementation of the commissioning process. Now, this person can be the contractor. It could be a third-party contractor, an AE that we hire, or it could be an AE that we hire just to support us, USACE, as the commissioning authority. And the other definition I wanted to stress is what's called whole building or total building commissioning. And whole building or total building commissioning really focuses on how the building systems interact with all the other systems. How does the VAV system in one room interact with the other room? The following are several common systems that could be included in a commissioning plan, but I'm not saying that they have to be. This is worked out during the design phase for what you will be commissioning. Is HVAC, the building envelope, protective systems such as fire suppression, plumbing such as water distribution, electrical such as power distribution or lighting, communication systems, telecom, sound, video, alarm systems, fault detection, security, and leak detection. Not every project is going to have all of those features. It depends on what, if your building is a communications type system, you probably focus more on that. Again, that would be taken care of in the design phase. Rich, can we switch to my desktop at this point, because it's kind of small?
It shows as a full desk. It'll show as a full desktop for everybody else.
Okay.
You can't see it.
Well, it looks like a slide to me, but it's small. I thought it would be better if we went somewhere else. But basically, this is what I borrowed from Frank Pinker. He's in Southwest, I think, Fort Worth district. And he does a really good job of commissioning. He uses this slide to describe the commissioning authority is the red and the blue circle, which is the USACE is red, and the blue circle might be a commissioning specialist. And that's under a design, bid, build process. So basically, the commissioning authority is both of those entities, not just one person. And on the bottom is the design build, and it's showing that USACE and the commissioning specialist, again, is the authority, but the only difference between the two is that little green box, which is the AE, which is the designer of records. But I thought that he uses this during his construction phase to try to help define the roles in the organization. So this is the last slide on defining commissioning. So commissioning is a quality assurance process, and that's why we tend to focus more on construction, but as we'll discuss further in these slides, you really have to start with design. But the quality assurance process for buildings, from pre-design through design, construction, and post-occupancy during the building operations. And it's more a discipline of verifying and documenting that systems have been verified to work in accordance with the plans and specs. So we talk about commissioning occurring from pre-design all the way through occupancy. The pre-design phase is where you're going to get the owner's requirement clearly defined and realistic. The design phase is where you're going to make sure that the commissioning is incorporated into your plans and specs, whether you're doing only HVAC or you're going to be doing HVAC and domestic hot water systems and communications. That would be taken care of in the design phase. and to have the commissioning authority available and being focused on that, and have him provide that continuity from a meeting with the owner to make sure that it's in the design, and then also occurring in construction through the commissioning plan and implementation. And then afterwards, during the occupancy, making sure, again, that the owner's requirements are there. I'm not saying that the owner gets everything that they request, because it may not have been in the scope or the cost funding, but it has to be what was within scope, within the contract documents. So the keys to successful commissioning are making sure that the owner's project requirements are incorporated early into design, and that the commissioning team has all the stakeholders involved needed to provide sufficient input to the design. And that would be the commissioning authority, the designer, the user, the O&M staff that's going to be managing it, Corps of Engineers, and the contract team with specialists from controls, mechanical, and electrical. So the commissioning plan is best to really specify your roles and responsibilities. Who's going to be responsible for planning the tests? Who's going to be responsible for witnessing the tests? You know, is it going to be the commissioning authority? Is it going to be the specialist from the contract? Is it going to be the commissioning specialist that we hire to help us develop the documentation that's required? Are the checklists in order? Are the test protocols written before the test is done, written and reviewed by the commissioning specialist or authority? And communicating these issues at progress meetings and tracking them on issues logs. Just some more key points for successful commissioning: documents control, proper training, functional performance verification by the team. So now we're going to get into the commissioning process. I know it's a lot of words, but unfortunately it's a big process that interacts with your design and construction and operations of your building. So it starts with really documenting what the owner's needs are. Most of the time for DoD projects, that would be starting with the 1391. You have the scope of work and what the costs are that are available, and refined during the 3086 planning phases. You have to document the design team's reason and decision. That's typically done in the basis of design. Conducting quality peer reviews. We do that through our three-phase construction. The quality peer reviews are more like BCO, Es, and ITRs. Defining, specifying, planning, and verifying the functional testing of the building systems. That would be taken care of in a commissioning plan. Increased coordination and integration of construction trades. That would probably be the commissioning authority interacting with the construction staff on site in the construction trades. Preparing and enhancing building documentation, doing a better job of really building a systems manual and O&M manual. Improving the operations and maintenance training process, really ensuring that that occurs and that the right people are there. Post-construction and pre-occupancies. This commissioning is a lot of words that we've covered, but really what it is back in the 80s, it was really called startup testing troubleshooting. When you build this big fancy building for millions of dollars, and then you turn it over, and you can't just walk away. You have to turn on the systems one by one, ensure that each system is operating according to the manufacturer's specifications, that each of those systems interact properly with other systems, and balancing and integrating those systems with each other. For example, I think commissioning, the term really started in the Navy when they would have these ships and vessels that they built, and they were going to go out to sea for 6 months or 12 months. And they were brand new. Before they went out, they actually tested everything and made sure it worked, so that they weren't, 60 miles out at sea and something didn't work and they needed to replace a control component, and they'd have to come back. So it's now, the term is being applied to buildings, but like I said before, it used to just be system startup testing, operations, and training. So the idea is to turn over a building that's operating according to the customer's requirements, but not anything that's not within contract documents. We like to stress that. If it didn't make it into the contract documents, you can't ask the contractor to do it. And that's why it's even more important to have a commissioning mindset or a commissioning team involved in the pre-design and design phase so that everything makes it into the contract documents before you try to build it. The final act in the commissioning process is the post-occupancy inspection. If you turn over a building in March, it might work really well, but then in the middle of winter in December, all of a sudden the heat can't reach the set point that it was designed for. So that's why you need to come back months later to see what the seasonal fluctuations and that the systems, even though when you tested it and turned it over during one season, is now going to work throughout all the extremes of the seasons. So systems to be commissioned for USACE at a minimum are the HVAC systems, the interior and exterior lighting and daylighting controls, the domestic hot water systems, renewable energy systems, electrical submetering systems, and building envelope, building air tightness test. The building envelope, the reason why these are at a minimum is because USACE or Army, as well as many other DoD components, have already decided that they will achieve a LEED Silver certified rating using the Green Building Rating System. In order to achieve that certification, you have to get all of the prerequisites. And the top four bullets are requirement as a prerequisite for commissioning in LEED Building Rating System, and we'll see that in a later slide as well. The building envelope air tightness, that's a requirement that the Army Corps has applied to, or Army has applied to buildings through an ECB that came out in 2010. A lot of times, we could talk about this later in LEED, you could pursue an innovative point in LEED to submit the building envelope commissioning as an innovative point. So where does this all come from? What's driving this? We put together a list of commissioning guidance documents. And we have systems commissioning procedures from 1995, systems operations and maintenance documentation, transfer and warranty. These are engineering regulations that define how we're supposed to be commissioning, maintaining, and turning over our projects. And why commissioning has become more prominent now is because U.S. Green Building Council kind of put it into their LEED system that was developed in about 2001 as a best management practice such that it would be a prerequisite, as we discussed before. It's a prerequisite in order to have a high-performance sustainable building. The other items here are ASHRAE guidelines. ASHRAE Guideline 0 in 2005 is the commissioning process, while ASHRAE Guideline 1.1 from 1996 is the HVAC commissioning process, which the Guideline 1.1 has a lot of really good examples of how to put together an owner's project requirement and what the checklist should look like, and that's why we add it. The next bullet is ASHRAE Guideline 189.1. This is here because in FY13 and beyond, Army is going to be pursuing the, at a minimum, ASHRAE 189, and I have some slides at the end that will discuss that a little bit. And the memorandum from Department of Army from October 10, Sustainable Design and Development Policy Update. And we'll talk about that in the next slide here. So by memo, Army has identified the need for commissioning, total building commissioning on their facilities. And they actually call out not only, what we talked about for lighting, domestic hot water, but they're saying that, if enhanced commissioning activities should be planned and budgeted for and specified to be completed for the building envelope, stormwater management, water treatment systems, and information technology systems. So Army's giving us guidance as to how they would like their commissioning to be done. How USACE has addressed commissioning in their guidance back in 2006 under Sustainable Design and Development. That's when USACE said starting in FY08, all MCA climate control projects are required to achieve USGB LEED Silver certification. At that time, I'm not sure about the other DoD components, but Army was pursuing LEED. At this time, I'm pretty pretty positive all the other DoD components, Air Force, Navy, even DoD schools, I get that question a lot, are pursuing LEED Silver. So all projects should be at least achieving a fundamental commissioning as a prerequisite for LEED. UCB 2010-14, a 4 years later, started saying, let's improve our building performance and let's not just do fundamental commissioning, but let's pursue enhanced commissioning as per LEED. And we have some slides on that later. Then ECB 2011-1, a year later, supersedes the ECB 2010-14. And these are the two ECBs that really define how we should be just designing and implementing and constructing our sustainable buildings.
And I'm going to add a little interjection in there and state that we do have an ECB that was issued a few weeks ago in 2013 that does renew ECB 2011-1. However, we just had the Sustainability UFC that was published. I've also included that in the files to upload, so that's UFC 1-200-02, which is also available on the Whole Building Design Guide. And there are some portions of that ECB that directly relate to USACE and Army and Tri-Services commissioning processes.
This one also, it reiterates that we should be pursuing the enhanced commissioning. And for those projects that are not new construction but might be major renovations, that would fall under the Memorandum of Understanding under the Guiding Principles of Federal Leadership in High-Performance Buildings. And even there, they define verifying performance of building components and systems to ensure that the design requirements are met, and you are supposed to be pursuing commissioning even on your renovations. So, Rich, this might be a good time for questions, and we'll go into some tasks. Do you have any questions yet?
There's one question out there from Norm Schaefer. Did I hear you say that NAD is the Center of Standardization or Center of Excellence for Commissioning for Sustainable Engineering? If not, is there a USACE organization that is the COS or COE?
Okay, Rich, can we pull up that slide you were talking about, that Mercy?
Well...
I think we're reorganizing within USACE, and we have taken the 21 technical competencies from eco-charrettes to energy modeling to commissioning and several others, and put them into a region so that that region can focus just on either that or the other one or two items from that list, and really become really smart on that, and then start having webinars like this to translate and share with people what the technical latest best management practices are. So no, NAD is not the as you put it, I think you said COS, Center of Standardization. No, what we're doing is we're trying to leverage our technical expertise by focusing in on an area and then sharing it with the rest of the nation. So we're calling these regional technical centers of expertise. And we did a hedgehog analysis and pulled up the capabilities from all of our regions and saw where our strengths were. And that's where we assigned these centers to be.
So this is the MRSI page that Patricia was referring to. This is our website where we have these regional technical centers for which Patricia is the lead for enhanced commissioning and commissioning processes. So you can see the link here. This is also where we have our recordings, but each of our centers have a separate web page located on this website.
Should I answer the? Sorry. You have to, and we're also developing, as part of our Center of Standardization for sustainability, each one of these centers is responsible for creating a page on a web page under the MRSI, which stands for Military Requirements Standardization Integration web page. And that's what it's asking, Rich, were you able to get it up? Or?
Yes, it's up. Do you want to take a side trip and walk through the actual website?
I think so, a little bit. I think it might help explain it because it's a little confusing. Do I have to hit something? Because I still see my slides. Life cycle cost analysis, lighting, metering, renewable, renovations, waste, and water, black water. These are the sub-components or 21 competencies that we've decided we need to focus more on. And so everything, it's part of the COST website, but it's a little bit more fractured than that. And each region has about 2 of these centers. And that's what I meant, that commissioning has been assigned to NAD to focus on and then to try to transmit more information. Right now, this is the first webinar we prepared. While doing it, I realized that we probably need more webinars on successful commissioning projects and show people how it's been done, how it saves money.
You want to go down the commissioning tab?
Do you have it? Because we did download some information there. Eventually, I think when you sign on, I did recently sign on, you have to get a little password eventually when it's available for you.
There's no information there. There's the calendar, the standard picture, and the Latin. So, do you have some references there?
Rich, scroll down. Scroll to the bottom of the page.
Okay.
There you go.
So this is a pre-recorded webinar for those of you that have just joined, and we're not going to go through the details of the MRSI website. We're going to try to move on to the commissioning tasks.
I think we should probably give that a lengthy answer to the question. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, let me go back to the presentation then.
But I think it's definitely an important question. I apologize if I confused you, but we're developing these. We started developing these in December, so it's about 6 months, and we're really ready to kick off probably in another month or 2.
Okay, I've returned you the presentation. You're on slide 16.
Thank you. And were there any other questions about processes, and we're going to move on to tasks?
There's a connectivity between getting the lead points and commissioning, but you're not saying that commissioning gives you lead points, or if you get your lead points, then you're considered commissioning correct, or what? I guess I know you talked about them together, but is there actually some sort of more connectivity between the two?
I'll to answer your question, I'll skip down a bit because it's a good question. What we have now, because that's why we're trying to have a webinar. It's getting confusing. Everybody, when I go talk to people about commissioning, they start talking about lead. I'm like, I don't really care about lead. I want to make sure that the building is commissioned properly for what the building's needs are, what the complexities of that building are. When I talk to commissioning agents in the industry, they're not so happy with lead fundamental commissioning because they think it's too minimal. They think it degrades commissioning as a whole. So I am trying to impress, hopefully at the end of this session, that there's a lot of crosswalks between what we're currently doing in our USACE processes, what fundamental and enhanced commissioning are. But no, if we follow the USGS specs, which on the 3rd column here, I've tried to make a crosswalk between the first column is USGBC leads requirement for fundamental commissioning. Those ones are not bolded. The items that are bolded, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, conduct commissioning design review, those are what you would need to do for enhanced commissioning. So on this list, you have about 12 items that are fundamental and enhanced commissioning. And then in the middle, you have USACE processes that we do right now. For example, conduct commissioning design reviews. We do ITRs, BCO checks. We have doctor checks. I included doctor checks because part of what the requirement for lead enhanced commissioning, and we'll cover that on another slide, is that the commissioning authority reviews the design at the same time as the DOR, as a different review, and he provides comments, but those comments have to be adjudicated before you move forward, so that's why I included doctor checks. And then on the 3rd slide, the reference is the core engineering regulation SOP or document that really describes how we do design reviews. We're currently looking at this as a team and trying to see if what we do actually meets lead fundamental and lead enhanced commissioning, or if we need to supplement it a little bit more. So far, the feedback we've got is the submittal review for enhanced commissioning. That's the bolded item, so that's not fundamental, but for enhanced is I had put in there the process resident engineer plus architect and DOR review. They felt that the submittal review might not be sufficient, and we might need to augment that particular task. So that's one of the things that these regional centers are set up to do, to really dig deep into this and evaluate and analyze, are we meeting this? Can we meet this in-house? Do we have to hire a third-party person or not? And we have gone to USGBC to talk to them about since USACE is the Army's agent, why shouldn't we be considered the third-party individual to do enhanced commissioning? So we're developing some of those things. So let me see your question originally was like, if I do lead commissioning, am I meeting commissioning? Yes and no. There's slight variations here and there, and it depends on what you think you need. And in the future, the answer is going to be no, because as we get to the end, ASHRAE 189 is a little bit different. But were you, the questioner, were you from USACE or are you from somewhere else?
IMCOM.
IMCOM, okay. So IMCOM, you are going to be required to use ASHRAE 189 as well with us. So what I'm trying to impress on you is that we are kind of doing a lot of it, but we do have to analyze it and see if we're missing just a small piece that needs to be augmented in our current process to make sure that we get what we need to get. We're also debating whether or not lead enhanced commissioning is a requirement, because what Ms. Hammock had said was total building commissioning and whole building commissioning, and her comment had said that enhanced commissioning process activities must be planned and budgeted. So we're not sure if she actually meant enhanced commissioning in accordance with LEED, or just enhanced commissioning because she added building envelopes, stormwater management, water treatment systems, and information technology systems. So it really comes down to what you're building, what energy system needs to be checked and verified. I know it's a kind of a non-answer, but there is no clear, there's no path to follow to ensure that you're getting what you need, because it's project by project. And what the best path to follow that I'm trying to impress on you is that you have to have a commissioning team look at it at the pre-design and design phase in order to actually make sure that you're getting the commissioning that you need for that building. Norm, does that help?
Yeah, what you're saying is there'll be something, I guess, similar to LEED. I hate to use that as a crutch, but you're saying there'll be something, a checklist or something you're going to have to go by to say this is done and that's done, and at the bottom, yeah, we certify because these criteria were met, this building is commissioned.
Yes, and LEED has that checklist, and it's almost like you should be at least following the LEED fundamental. You have to follow LEED fundamental, and you should probably be following LEED enhanced commissioning. But we keep getting wrapped around the axle on the third-party reviewer commissioning authority. So that's kind of why we're trying to take the narrative back a step and say, what are we really trying to do here? Are we trying to satisfy a point in LEED, or are we really trying to turn over a building that operates properly? So we're debating this as a group and saying, our ECB took Ms. Hammock's guidance, which was really just saying, I want total building commissioning. I want to know that, and it's tailored to the size and the complexity of the building. So it has to be, everything you do is tailored to your project. And she wants a lot of system components. She actually wants, if you look at this list, more than what LEED asks us to do, because she's adding information technology systems. And we have taken an ECB and turned that into, okay, pursue, LEED EA Credit 3 enhanced commissioning. Because if we do that, we at least know we're getting partway there. But are we really getting what we want is what the question is. And ASHRAE 189.13, when we get to ASHRAE 189.1, when we get to that, adds even more items to the list, which I think meets what Ms. Hammock is looking for. So once we get to FY13 projects, we have to follow 189, and they do have checklists and tools. And I have one. If I could show you on my desktop, hopefully I'll be able to do that. Okay, and we'll go to commissioning tasks. So we started this discussion, LEED fundamental commissioning. So everybody should be doing this on every DoD project. So you have to designate an independent CX with experience of at least 2 similar projects. Document the owner's project requirements. We do that again with our design charrettes and our 1391s. Develop a basis of design. That would be our design documentation. Incorporate commissioning requirement into construction documents. Now, this is where we get to Norm's question here. Currently, most of the times we see HVAC, but now we have to start thinking about other energy systems as well and other MEP systems. Develop and implement a commissioning plan. This occurs at the design and the construction phase. You develop it at the design phase, but then you redevelop it, relook at it in the construction phase. Verify and install the performance of commissioned systems. We do that as our normal QA processes in construction. But what we need to do is I guess, get more discipline in documenting and having the performance checklist and the pre-performance checklist attached at the end of the final commissioning report and complete a summary commissioning report. Now, all of these things we are required to do in our USGS and our ER, so this should not be a real problem for us. Then we get to the commissioning guidance on enhanced commissioning. So these are, you have to do the fundamental that I just discussed on the previous slide, but now you have to do these other items. And these other items include, the first one is the one that I said we keep getting wrapped around the axle on, is an independent experienced commissioning authority needs to be designated to lead, review, and oversee commissioning efforts prior to the construction documents phase of the project. So this is where we get to. In the past, we probably just did HVAC. We started commissioning in the construction phase. We have to reframe the discussion and really start it in the pre-design design phase. And we should be doing that for total building commissioning anyhow. Commissioning, you have to conduct at least one commissioning design review. In order to meet this credit, you have to have a commissioning design review prior to mid-construction documents, basically 50% design or earlier. You should have 2 design reviews, maybe a conceptual plan, 35%, somewhere at 50%, and then you have to adjudicate those comments and address them before you put the project out to bid. That's kind of something different for us now that we're adapting to. The commissioning reviews the contractor's submittals applicable to the systems being commissioned. That doesn't mean that the commissioning authority reviews all the submittals that come in through the resident engineer's office, but just the ones that are applicable to the systems that you want commissioned. If you want the IT systems commissioned, then he would review those. So that's where you develop that at the pre-design, conceptual, and design phase. The commissioning authority also provides a systems manual, which we do have an ER for O&M and systems manual, so we should be looking at I will be looking at our current guidance and see if it needs to be augmented in order to meet this. Training for the building operator personnel. I know I get a lot of feedback that this is a challenge getting the right people in for training, but the commissioning authority now is going to be that overall nag with continuity of the project from pre-design. Now he's at the end of the project with you, and he's saying, you can't hold this training today because you didn't get the right people. So it kind of puts a little bit more pressure on the schedule-driven folks in the field, which that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to build a project and get it done on time, on schedule. Sometimes we're so focused on schedule, we're not looking at quality. So to have this commissioning authority person there who's just focused on how the system actually operates is beneficial. And then the commissioning authority will review the building's operations within 10 months. So we covered that. That's to cover the seasonal variations. And also to make sure that the systems we turned over, maybe they got lucky and they just worked that one day when you tested it, but now 10 months later, are they still operating the way they are supposed to? And let's see. So that covers lead. Any questions on lead? We'll cover it a little bit more when we get back to that table. So designs, now here in ASHRAE Guideline, which is really the industry guide to commissioning, is ASHRAE Guidelines 1.1. However, 1.1 was written in 1996, and it's really just for HVAC. But when I review these guidelines, it really provides a good nuts and bolts cookbook procedure on how to prepare some of these documents. So in the design phase, you're dealing with the owner's project requirements, making sure they're translated into the construction documents. And if you were to go to ASHRAE Guideline into the paragraph 5.2.2.1, you see a little bit more information, and they have some really good appendices of samples of what an OPR should look like. The creation of the basis of design document, we document our designs already, so if you wanted to make sure that you were following ASHRAE Guidelines, you would follow that. And if you were to hire a third-party commissioning authority, they would probably follow this as well. Development of the commissioning plan, again, so I'm not going to read through all of these, but these are some references of what we've already discussed, what you need to do. Also in the design phase, you're going to need to develop your construction checklist. You're going to develop a list of items you want commissioned. You're going to try to develop the checklist that you need to pre-functional and functional checklist. That will be also looked at again in the construction phase once you have a contractor and see if it needs updated. So they're talking about the format of the systems manual. It should be clearly stated in your design specs, saying this is what I want from a systems manual, and the training requirements, this is what I want from training. You should be developing test procedures too. So having the commissioning authority early on in the design phase, if he says, if you pick this one chiller, and he says, and then you conceptually design a control that probably doesn't operate optimally with that chiller, the commissioning authority will look at it and say, well, is that what you really want? Or he'll look at your test procedure and goes, that test procedure is not really going to give you what you want for that particular unit. And the commissioning authority has experience with that type of equipment. So that's the benefit of getting them involved really early to help with the test procedures and making sure that you set up the test procedures so that your contractors will really give you what you want in the end. The construction phase, construction phase has a lot to do with scheduling when things are done. You're going to look at pipe and duct leakage. You're going to look at the HVAC equipment installation. Does it meet factories? Does the system itself operate the way it's supposed to operate? And does it then, when we hook it up to the ductwork, does it still operate correctly? Or is there too much friction through the ducts because they weren't sized properly and those kind of things? And BAS, building automated system control testing, that's important too. Developing test records. It's important that the commissioning authority is going to look at the trend logs, maybe operate the building for a week and take a look and see. A lot of things they find in trend logs, the computer is continually collecting information, and if it's collecting information about at 75 degrees from 8 to 6, which is what you expect, then all of a sudden you see that it's like 60 degrees at night and you don't know why. There might be something wrong with the controls, or there might be something wrong with something that's going on. It could be a mission requirement that you're not aware of and you didn't design for, so you would like to look at the trend logs for a week and see if you could save energy there. You look at temperatures, pressures, volumes, capacities, and you also want to deal with comfort. A lot of times we have a big challenge with the temperature and the relative humidity, so it solve some of those problems as well. In the occupancy and operations phase, we talked about we're going to verify seasonal testing. You're going to complete the final process report, and you're going to ensure involvement of the commissioning authority at 10 months. Somebody trying to ask a question? Okay, so this is like a picture of what lead fundamental versus lead enhanced credits and what phase something has to occur. So again, we're getting repetitive a little bit, but this is a pretty nice diagram that shows the top item. Both fundamental and enhanced commissioning have to develop an OPR. Both fundamental and enhanced commissioning have to have a design team to create the BOD. This is occurring during the design phase. Then for enhanced commissioning, you need the owner's agent. He has to designate a commissioning authority by this time in the design phase before 50% of the contract documents are completed, and he has to review the OPR and the BOD. So that's the varying difference, and this chart kind of makes it a little bit simpler. So this is the design, this is the construction documents. We're still in design because we're developing construction documents. And then in the installation phase, again, you see 3 additional blue boxes in the enhanced commissioning, where the commissioning reviews the contractor's submittals, he develops the systems manual, and he verifies that the training has occurred. While for both, you're going to be verifying installation performance of the building systems, which we do during our normal construction quality assurance process. And you're going to observe system functional testing, which we do during our normal QA process, but now you're going to do it in the presence of this commissioning authority or commissioning NAG that's going to make sure that it is actually meeting the OPR, the owner's project requirements. And both require development of commissioning report that captures everything that occurred during commissioning, all the deficiencies that were corrected, so that further down the line, if you have an O&M problem, you can kind of see in the original report, well, we had this problem before, and this is how we fixed it. And this was the chart that I was trying to show you, the USACE processes versus lead EA credit 3, which is enhanced commissioning. The enhanced commissioning, again, is the bolded items, and the fundamental is the non-bolded items. But what we're trying to say is, like, if you were to go and talk to somebody and say, well, I need you to develop a commissioning plan, and the contractor tells you, well, no, I don't have to. you could go over to the reference and see in commissioning, it should be USGS or spec 23-0923. Kind of trying to help you manage it and refer to the right specifications, and where you could, if you need help developing the commissioning plan, you can look at ASHRAE 0 and ASHRAE 1.1. So these are like reference documents to help guide you through each of these tasks. And we talked a little bit about the course construction process, and if people aren't aware of it, I just want to bring it up. Our construction process, we have notice to proceed, pre-construction conference, where you would probably want to talk about the commissioning plan, schedule review, where you want to make sure the commissioning is on the schedule, submittals. We probably have to revisit how we do our submittal register and our specs right now, and see if we need to change some of the components for information only for review, or maybe add something for commissioning, and that's something that we'll have to take a look at the commissioning center and see if we need to change that. And for those of you who haven't worked in construction, there's what they call a three-phase quality assurance quality control inspection, where you do a preparatory inspection where you read through the specifications and ensure that all the people who are on the team understand what is going to be done, what is in the specifications. The initial inspection is when equipment or material arrives on site. The inspector will go out to ensure that it's actually what was specified and that it wasn't substituted without our knowledge, and things like making sure that you have a train HVAC instead of a half HVAC system, and because you want to make sure that the set points are to meet the design. And the follow-up inspections would be every day, going out to the field and seeing what they're working on today and what quality they have, what their safety is. Also attending progress meeting. We're seeing that the buildings, we have a lot of BRAC projects that achieve LEED Gold, and I'm seeing a similarity in that the customer attended the monthly progress meetings to go over the sustainable components and make sure that LEED was being pursued. So progress meetings are really important, and we should probably expand who attends them. Good time for questions. We have about 7 slides on just introducing what ASHRAE 189 has to say about commissioning. Rich, any questions?
None right now.
Okay. So ASHRAE 189 is an Army requirement for FY13. I think the tri-services are discussing it and seeing if the other services would like to pursue it, or if they could pursue pieces of ASHRAE 189. But ASHRAE 189 is ASHRAE's response kind of to green building rating system. It was originally really designed to be a code for local towns and counties that might not have as much staff as we do at the federal government to conceptualize and be creative about building high-performance buildings. So it was intended to help those people. So it has a prescriptive approach as well as an optional variation on it. But it covers sustainable sites, it covers water use efficiency, energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality, impact on the atmosphere, materials and resources, and in bold on the bottom here, commissioning falls into the construction and operation plan. So now they're expanding it. They're not just saying construction verification and giving a manual. They want it under operations plans. ASHRAE 189 goes even further into what's your green cleaning. You know, they really want a holistic look at the entire operations to be included in this end part. So USGBC did work with ASHRAE, so they're working hand in hand on this. I'm not really sure if, in my mind, but ASHRAE 189, does it supersede LEED? Would we have to pursue LEED anymore? So I'm not really sure how that goes. And I think the answer we got emphatically, and I think Rich, you could follow up on this, is that no, we're doing both ASHRAE 189 and LEED. Rich?
I don't have anything to follow at this point in time. I know that there's a great controversy going on still relative to the NDAA and congressional oversight of our application of either ASHRAE or LEED, and those decisions are supposed to have been reached in June, haven't been reached yet.
So
we're still following LEED.
Yes, we're still following LEED, and we're still going to start following ASHRAE 189. That's where we stand right now. So some of the highlights from the construction and operations, remember what I said, is that it's not just construction. Acceptance testing, commissioning, indoor air quality, construction management plan, which kind of falls under some of the IEQ and LEED, plans for operation, maintenance, service life, and transportation management. So what I keep saying when all these new systems come out and all these new guidances, it's like an incremental creep to be more and more sustainable. So that's what I'm saying. I hope at the end of this I'm showing you that we're all moving in this direction, and the more, you can't get away with less. It's just, you have to keep doing more. So where does commissioning fit? In Section 10 of the ASHRAE, 189, they have the requirements for construction and operation plans, which includes the commissioning process, building acceptance testing, measurement and verification, and reporting of energy use, water use, and indoor air quality. They also specify to assist building owners in achieving high-performance operation. So after we build it, turn it over, and walk away, these guidelines are designed to help the operators make sure that it stays a high sustainable building. This is just, why and how, we're supposed to get 30% more energy savings if we follow 189. They have the compliance. It's a mandatory plus a prescriptive or a simple option. There's very few calculations in ASHRAE 189 because you can follow mandatory plus performance, but in commissioning, it's just mandatory. It's basically a checklist. Have you done this? Have you done that? While ASHRAE 189 has the mandatory plus prescriptive, not in this particular section. It's just mandatory. So the way that they break it out, though, is under acceptance testing. So they say before the permit and after before building occupation. That's how ASHRAE, they kind of twist it a little bit and change it. But it's still the same thing, accepting the building that they call it, instead of commissioning authority, they call it the acceptance representative. And in the case of some of the arguments we have about who's the commissioning authority, we keep saying the Corps has to be the commissioning authority because we're the only one who can accept the equipment and accept the building. So here, ASHRAE 189 takes that stance. It just says it's the acceptance representative must review construction documents to verify relevant sensor location devices and control sequences are properly documented, and that's kind of done during design commissioning. Then before the building is occupied, acceptance testing has been done that includes a sign-off from all parties, and systems manuals must be provided to the operations staff. Then they talk about additional commissioning for projects greater than 5,000 square feet. More detailed commissioning process could be done, and it kind of follows LEED ASHRAE Guideline 0 as designated commissioning authority, and some of the things we've already seen. BOD reflects the OPR, commissioning to verify performance and train on personnel. Now here's where I start talking about the incremental creep and why we keep moving forward. The systems requiring commissioning in ASHRAE 189 have this whole list. They're not just doing HVAC like we've done traditionally, and they're not just doing HVAC and water heating and renewable energy systems and lighting controls, which are bolded here because those are the items that are required for LEED, but they're also including refrigeration, building envelope, shading controls, irrigation, pumping, domestic process water pumping, water measurement devices, and energy measurement devices, i.e. meters. So it's a bigger picture, and this is the direction that we're moving in. Commissioning really does have positive impacts. It really does lower the operations and maintenance costs. I was on a GSA website today, and it said that buildings that were commissioned, total building commissioning, tend to be 8 to 20% less operating costs. And over a 20 or 30-year period of time, that adds up to, could be more than the actual upfront capital costs for the buildings, and that's why it's important. The project benefits from a collaborative effort of diverse participants, such as having the mechanical, electrical, and the commissioning agent involved in the design charrette up front. When you're selecting and locking down, or even if you're 65 or 90% design, when you're picking your systems and having systems interact with each other, these people with experience can collaborate with you and say, well, that system doesn't necessarily work with that system because the controls operate differently. So that's a big plus, that you actually get a better building in the end. You have a reduced contractor callbacks from warranty calls and approved maintenance and equipment of equipment and systems. And you have a fully functioning facility that hopefully meets what the customer wanted in the first place. You know, once we plan our project year 1, we design it year 2 and 3, we put it out to bid in year 3, 4. By the time we build it 5 years later, does anybody really remember what the owner wanted? You know, so you have this individual, this commissioning authority, or this team that's considered the commissioning authority that's making sure that the owner's project requirements are following through. I have just about 3 slides left, and I just wanted to give you a little indication of cost, because that question comes up a lot, and I'll continue to collect information on cost, but it really depends on the size and the complexity of the building and what you put into your spec to be commissioned. But estimates from Lawrence, LVNL, it's a laboratory, a government laboratory. They did a study and they found that the median cost was $1.16 for new construction per square foot. I guess I'm missing a square foot. And it was about 0.4% of the overall cost of construction. RS Means estimates commissioning at 1 to 1.25% of total project cost. I've seen 1 to 2.5 as well. That seems to be the general focus. The 2004 GSA study estimated the incremental increase. Now this is again the difference between the fundamental and enhanced. So to go the extra mile, they're saying is really just about 10 or 15 cents more than commissioning. And commissioning costs typically pay for themselves in less than a year by correcting construction deficiencies that would cost a lot of money in operations. I did provide this link. I haven't been able to open it myself because I borrowed these bullet points from a tech note that Dan Carpio at headquarters prepared, and if we have time, I could try to show you the tech note. The tech notes are available on the Mercy site, even though the sustainability portion is not operating yet. The tech notes were separate, and there's a tech note on commissioning, and it provided an example. This is the example they provided, but they also provided links to other examples. So the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab was a specific lab, a molecular foundry, but it's a 6-story, 94,000 square foot facility. And during commissioning, they identified 48 deficiencies during the construction phase. And the measures that they implemented to fix it, they just modified the control sequence. You know, when did the HVAC come on? When did it turn off? When did the variable VAV open? When did it shut? The set points of the start and stop of operations. They calibrated the terminal unit damper position feedbacks. They calibrated the lighting occupancy sensors, and they ran the air compressor into specification according to the manufacturers. So they saved $93,000 per year, and the cost for commissioning was only $39,000. So the simple payback is 0.4 years. It's probably different for everything, depending on what you're commissioning and what systems you're looking at. But this is just an example of how it can really pay for itself. I also found on the GSA.gov they have a really interesting website. Again, if we have more time, I can show you the website. But there again, they reiterate that GSA has looked at it and they found that commissioning costs about 0.5 to 1.5% of the total construction cost. I just wanted to give you another reference point. And there's a link there that you can look at. And more complex projects run, 1% at the higher end of the construction budget. So it depends. I mean, I've seen people quote that commissioning can cost up to 2%. And I think that would be probably in something like a hospital where you're not just commissioning the energy systems, you're also commissioning to make sure that there's no infection, that infection control and indoor environmental quality is properly taken care of. And this is the last slide. Other training opportunities.
Before Patricia goes into other training opportunities, I wanted to address a few questions. We had somebody that asked who pays for commissioning and how is it contracted. So Patricia's responded by stating that current funding guidance still applies per ER 110-345-723 on commissioning, which says that the commissioning funding must be in accordance with the activities performed. So for the design activities that occur prior to the award planning and design, P&D, funds should be utilized. For activities occurring after a construction contract award, the design agent commissioning activities should be related to extension of design and will therefore be funded by engineering during construction, EDC resources. Construction agent activities should be funded with S&A, supervision and administration resources. Design agent quality assurance support should be available to and under the control of the construction agent. The QA support would be S&A funded. And lastly, that the construction contractor's activities that are associated with executing the commissioning process during construction must be included as contract requirements, and therefore they be funded with the project construction funds. So I hope that helps a little bit with questions on how to fund within the core the commissioning activities. So a little bit about training.
Like I said, this is kind of just an overview and trying to explain the differences between the USACE, USGBC, ASHRAE, where I think there's more similarities than there are differences. But other training opportunities, we have a prospect course that's a 5-day course. It's half lecture and half hands-on, where you actually are commissioning the boiler, chiller, VAV, air handling units and boxes. There's Association of Energy Engineers Certified Building Commissioning Preparatory class. It's a 5-day class. It's a lecture series by industry professionals in total building commissioning. It goes beyond the process, and they have specialists that come in and talk to you about tabs, so that if you're inspecting a tab contractor, you know what calculations he's doing, what equipment he's using. And they have a specialist that talks to you for 2 hours on electrical commissioning, and another that does building envelope commissioning. They use calculations and real examples. And again, if we have more time, I have some pictures from that seminar. They show examples of commissioning deficiencies. And ASHRAE has live or web-enhanced 3 or 6 hour webinars that cover just the commissioning process in more detail. And that's what I have. Rich, I think you could open it up for questions. And if you could give me control, I can try to answer questions, trying to use some of the documents I have in a folder.
We're over time right now, so let's first answer the questions that have come in since you last broke for questions.
And I'm going to throw in another question just because we're over time as well. We've had 2 people ask. There's been some rumors circulating about rescinding the requirement for the LEED EA3 enhanced commissioning credit. Right now, we do not have any direction from ACSM. We've posed the question. We're working on developing policy. But until we actually get clear guidance that states which portions they want, which portions they don't, our guidance to the field is to continue utilizing enhanced commissioning EA Credit 3 as required on those projects. If anybody has any additional questions, they can feel free to write either myself or Patricia. We can provide any further clarification as needed.
John Brundage asks, when will we see ASHRAE 189 in the specs? Do you have any idea, Patricia?
You know, that's a good question. So no, I'll have to look into that and get back to you.
Okay. I will give you the I'll give you the list of the roster of attendees, and you can answer the question then after the session.
That'd be great.
Lori Arakawa asks, does the CXA develop or oversee the development of the systems manual? There has been some discussion that the designer of record would be the more appropriate responsible party to develop the systems manual, since they have the responsibility to ensure the design of the system works.
That's interesting, because I think we've been talking about it, that that seems to be something that is one of the things we would need to augment in order, our processes in order to achieve LEED Enhanced is the systems manual. And a lot of people have talked about hiring a commissioning specialist to develop that systems manual. So that's a good point, and I think I'll have to get back to her. I'll bring it to the group and ask them, you know, why would we hire a CXS, or why not the designer of record? I know before I worked for the Corps, when I did turnkey design, I did do the systems manual, so that is a good question. We didn't hire somebody else to do it. I designed it. I hired the subcontractors, and so I knew how the systems were supposed to interact. I hired the controls integrator, and I had it interpreted, so that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that one, too.
The last question is from Norm Schaefer. Will commissioning become another line item on the DD 1391?
There's a lot of discussion on that, and basically, if you go back to Ms. Hammock's one statement in 3 pages, it says, and I took a look at that because I thought, you know, I kept thinking it was USACE's problem, but she did send this to IMCOM. She sent it to all the agencies, and it says you need to plan and program for total building commissioning. And she So we should be including it, and that's why I wanted to include costs. If I want to make, if any PMs are on the line, I want to try to reach out to our PM community. If it's not on a 1391, we need to try to address it in the 3086, because what I'm hearing is that our current processes are not totally sufficient. We need additional funds for submittal review and for systems planning manual, and for the follow-up inspection, the 10-month follow-up inspection. So I don't know if you would need to put a whole 1% there, because some of the stuff we do already and should be built into the base cost, but there needs to be some sort of cost to address some of the additional enhanced or additional tasks that might be needed for whole building commissioning. And it should be done on the 1391. A lot of people rely on that 2% default for sustainability in EPAC 05. And that 2% was developed actually by Rich Snyder and next month. Before we moved to LEED, they
Harry Garadia.
Harry Garadia, didn't he hire you? So before we moved to LEED, they really did a great job analyzing LEED and what we were doing for Spirit. And for those of you who might not know, Spirit was actually LEED version 2.0 that was licensed to USACE, and we added some Army requirements such as Rich, if you can help me here, I think it was like facility, if you had to change the facility, there were 3 additional requirements. So we licensed LEED. So we've been doing LEED since 2001 with Spirit. And so they did a study to analyze what our current buildings are and if they would be